Hey everybody, so there's a growing worry in our society about electrosmog. Now this video is not going to be about electrosmog, it's going to be about the result of it, but it's there. It's this idea that all those radio waves and communication waves and all the AC current, it's creating a kind of smog of EMF around us, and that must be bad for our health, and so we need to protect ourselves. That's very true, it's there. You can see this really easily. If you take a fluorescent tube down to some power lines, well, you'll light that tube up, and that's kind of worrying for folk and awesome for other folk, but it has created a market for protection against this electrosmog. The way you protect yourself is to, live in a Faraday cage. A Faraday cage is basically a big conductive box around you that's put to ground, and the electrosmog hits that cage, gets converted into current, drains to the ground, and inside that cage, you're perfectly safe from it. To do that, the market has created a huge range of carbon and graphite based conductive paints that you paint on your wall, and this gives you the EMF protection. Now all of that is brilliant, but for me what it means is there is a super easy way to get hold of graphite and carbon based paints that you can use for other purposes. Now they are a bit expensive, in the sort of £50 to £30 region per litre, but there's no metal in them, they're all carbon, and their conductivity is superb, as it must be in order to function as a conductive paint to create a Faraday cage. So it's a brilliant way, if you don't feel like making your own, to buy something that you can do some exciting things with. So what I've got here is a flat panel radiator on MDF. It's pulling 35 watts, it's been on for about an hour, and the surface temperature is 44 degrees C, which is not bad when you think about it. And yep, that really is quite warm. Now, although this is low voltage, I'm touching it because it's got a plastic coating. And what we're going to do is go through how this is actually made. Make this thing, we need something to paint it on. Now it's going to be a wall heater, so you want to max out at sort of 80 degrees centigrade, something like that, because that's what your temperature of your current wall radiator is if you've got water-based wall radiators. But you're not going to do anything super high temperature, so pretty much anything will do, and I'm using a bit of MDF. But you could paint it on loads of things, like the back of some glass, maybe your wall, any flat surface you want really. You're going to be able to paint this on it without particularly worrying about it, because the temperature it's going to get to, well, it's just not that high. Okay, to make this thing, we need to connect it to something, so I use a bit of copper tape. This is sold as slug tape actually. It's an adhesive back copper that will stick to anything, and you run a line down one side because we're going to connect the power supply to this, whatever our power supply is. Turn over the end to make a connection point, and there are loads of ways of making connection points. You can crimp onto it, you can solder onto it, you can put a screw in it, a bolt in it. There's just such a ton of ways of doing that really, whatever you want. Anyway, put your copper tape down, make sure it's stuck, and then on the other side do exactly the same. The distance here is 600 millimeters down the top and 30 millimeters across. Then when we've done that and smoothed it down, what we need to do is paint it. So take the paint and apply a coat. Now you're going to need sort of 2 or 3 coats of this, and an area like this is probably going to take about 125 millilitres, something like that. And the one I bought was £12 for 125 millilitres. And if I was going to do this neatly, I'd put a bit of masking tape down there just to make sure that the edge is nice and neat. But the paint applies really easily and really beautifully. Now you finish it off in that direction because the paint will lie in that direction, and that's the direction you want, and all you do is paint the whole thing and leave it to dry, and then if you need to give it another coat, you give it another coat. What you're looking for is a resistance between those strips of around about 10 ohms or so. When you've left it to dry, this is what you'll get. Now I've covered the top with this stuff. It's a sticky back plastic you get for covering exercise books, and that works really well at these temperatures. But you need to cover it with something, and if it's on your wall, I guess you just paint over it. And as this stuff is made to be painted over, paint over it. but I just like this little bit of sticky back plastic to stop my hands rubbing off the paint. Okay, what we need to do now is supply a current. So all we do is connect up the leads, and I'm going to give this 12 volts because I've got this bent top power supply. Connect the leads up and then turn it on. And that really is all there is to it. Now, of course, there is a whole lot of other questions, like how do you make it safe? How do you control the heat? How do you know what voltage to put on it? All those kind of things. And because the safety Sallys always have a heyday with something electrical, I'm going to do a separate video on that aspect of it and explain that sort of stuff. What I want to point out, really, is that paint is here. It's really easy to use, and we used it to make a paint-on radiator, but of course it's designed to carry current. It's actually designed to collect the EMF and carry the current to Earth. Nothing to stop you carrying it to something else. So it has great potential for ambient energy collection, for heating units, for all kinds of things that I can see it's useful for. And the video is just about, hey, it's here, that's how easy it is to use. We'll do something else on the requirements needed to control the actual heat output. The thing that I made doesn't need any more control than voltage control. You just put that voltage in it, it will draw a certain amount of amps, and the heat it will give out to the ambient at such a rate that it won't heat up beyond a certain level. So it's perfectly safe with 12 volts on it, but I will go into that in more detail. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you very much for watching, and please do remember to like and subscribe.